what is realism? What is locality? How does that fit into quantum physics or the quantum predictive recipe, as you've called it?
Okay, so I mean, let me just say about the first one, there's a term realism or scientific realism. It has a perfectly good meaning in philosophy. I don't think it's relevant to this discussion at all. I think that one of the great distractors that has kept people from understanding what Bell did is somebody at some point, and recently there was a paper about the history of this. I can't remember the details. Somebody started sneaking the word realism or realist into accounts of Bell's theorem. Bell didn't use it, and it shouldn't be there. So they'll say, oh, Bell showed that a certain sort of realist theory can't account for this. And then you'd say, well, what is a realist physical theory? And the answer is that that's not even grammatical. Doesn't make any sense. In philosophy, scientific realism is a thesis about, do we ever have enough evidence to warrant belief in a theoretical postulate, in something you can't, in some sense, directly observe? I mean, if you go back to Descartes, he's asking, do we ever have enough evidence to even believe in things we think we can observe, like tables and chairs, right? Maybe I'm asleep. Maybe there's an evil demon, blah, blah, blah. But if you go to that level of skepticism, why are you talking about physics, right? If you're not really sure that there are such things as laboratories or stars or, okay, you can ask that question, but this is so distant from any physical considerations that it's not quite clear why you'd be bringing physics into it. Somehow at the beginning of the 20th century, the logical positivists sort of said, well, we're okay with things like tables and chairs and cats, but we're worried about atoms and electrons and things like that. Yeah. So then there was this distinction between observable and theoretical entities. And then scientific realism is the thesis, which I think is absolutely true, that at least sometimes we can have evidence that makes it rational to believe in certain things you can't directly observe. As I said, I believe in DNA. I believe there's such a thing as DNA. It has a double helix form. It has these 4 base pairs, and the base pairs connect in certain ways. And that explains a whole bunch about cellular, how cells work. And none of that is directly observable. So, but what does that have to do with anything? It has nothing to do with anything, because what Bell is about is about what in principle can a certain type of theory explain. Not what is the evidence that we could have for that theory, or should we even believe such a theory, but in principle, if I take any physical theory and put a certain restraint on it, which is a locality constraint, so sometimes called Bell locality or relativistic causality, so an abstractly definable constraint of what the physics is allowed to do, I don't care what the physics is, there are certain things it could not predict, and therefore certain things it could not explain. And I said all that without mentioning the word realist. So the problem is people first they sneak the word realist in, and then they say, well, I don't like Bell's result, so I'm just going to deny realism. And then his result goes away, right? His theorem doesn't apply because I don't believe in a realist physics. And you go, what are you even talking about? Any physics is making postulates about how the world is. If you're not doing that, you're not doing physics. You're doing something else. I don't know what you're doing, but physics is about hypotheses about the structure of the physical world. That's the only sense of realism, right? It's an attempt to describe the real physical world. Real is a funny word. I mean, I'll just say this final thing people can think about. Real is a funny word because it doesn't actually mean anything. So I say, I have a dog. Good. I have a real dog. Yeah. I have a real actual dog. Yeah. I have a real actual dog who actually exists. Yeah. I just said the same thing 5 different ways, right? Adding real, if I say I have a dog, but it's not a real dog, then the answer is, then you don't have a dog, right? You have, I don't know, a stuffed animal that looks like a dog, or you have but you don't actually have a dog. Real people put a big, capital R real or capital T true, same thing, right? I have a dog, good. The statement, I have a dog, is true. Yeah. Yeah, I've just said the same thing in different, they're equivalent in a certain way. Saying that it's true is just the same thing as saying it. And capitalizing the T in true is doing nothing but changing a typeface and trying to impress people with it, right? There's no difference between little t and big T. True is true. So sometimes people will sneak these words in that don't belong there and then think they can escape from the results by pointing at the thing they snuck in and saying, I'm going to reject that. And this is just completely illegitimate, right? Completely illegitimate.